Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. And today I'm reviewing Cuphead, the fast rolling dice game from the OP. And Cuphead is a video game if you don't know about it. This is the, well, not video game version. This is the fast rolling dice game, a real-time dice game for 1 to 4 players. We will be rolling dice frantically in order to take out the various bosses. And for the sake of showing you how setup would work and how everything's going to work over here, I'm literally going to just grab the first boss pack. You see, the game is going to give you a whole bunch of boss packs over here. We got all of these to go through, so lots of content in terms of being able to go from one boss to the next, slowly leveling up your experience and making things harder, and also giving you fun, cool stuff as you go. We're going to grab that first boss pack, we're going to open it up, and then we're going to remove this top card, grab a boss, and I'm redoing this. I've already done this, so this might not be in exactly the order yours will be. I'll grab a boss and put him over there. Usually you have a standee. For the sake of, well, you being able to see it, we'll put it over there. We're going to set the health to the number of players. In this case, 2 players is 8 health. And then we're going to grab all these cards until you reach a king card over there. You're going to stop when you reach that dice card. You're going to push this off to the side, and then you're going to take these cards, shuffle them up, and then draw 3 cards. That's the way it works. And now, you may notice that there's 4 slots here. That's because depending on what card you draw, there might be an opportunity to draw a 4th card. Let's go ahead and do that. We're going to draw 1, 2, 3, no 4th card drawn. Had we drawn this wallop card, we'd put the wallop down and then slide this over. And in fact, I'm going to do that just for the sake. We don't slide it over, sorry. We would draw the wallop and then draw a 4th card. That's the way it works out. We have these cards here, and now we're trying to take out the boss's health. Now, this is the part of the game where you hopefully have gone ahead and downloaded the timer. You can go to your Play Store, App Store, whatever store you have, grab the timer for the game. You don't need the timer for the game. I happen to like the timer because it gives you that last like 4 or 5 seconds, gives a little speeding up to it, and also some background music. It's a very simple app, but the point is, you play with a 10, 15, or 20-second timer. My personal recommendation is starting with 20 and moving your way down to 15. I think 15 is the sweet spot where the game is difficult and yet doable. 10 seconds to me seems absolutely bonkers crazy. If you're doing this game and surviving in 10 seconds, good on you. 10 seconds to me, that's enough time to pick up the dice. It's not enough time to actually roll things. So, you set your timer, again, app, otherwise, however you go ahead and do it. Start, again, my recommendation, start with 20 seconds, move your way down to 15 as you become more familiar with the game, and then you go ahead and start rolling dice. Now, each player is going to be rolling their own dice, 5 dice plus 1 special, a total of 6 die. I will go ahead and roll without the timer for the sake of showing you how things go. Now, imagine everything I do here is now being done in 15 or possibly even 10 seconds. I'm going to go ahead and roll the dice. Now over here, this is where we have to start assigning the dice because we're going to take attacks for every boss card we don't deal with. So I see that there's 2 footprints over here. I'm going to go ahead and grab one of these feet over here, put it there. The problem is, even though this next spot does require a foot, and you'll see each Cuphead character has 4 spots for the 4 associated cards, but I'll go ahead and roll again because you can't move to the next card without resolving the first card unless you're done with the first card. Meaning, once you advance, you can never go back, and I'd rather not take a damage on my first turn of the game. We'll go ahead and roll again. Unfortunately, we still don't have that second footprint symbol, so we're just hoping for the best over here. Boom, we got it over here. Now we can immediately go to the next zone without having to re-roll. We don't have to re-roll. As long as we have the next dice, we can go ahead and go to the next zone. And I'm going to lock this in here, and I'll explain why I lock that in. I don't actually have that over there. And you might be wondering, why are you locking in that little shooting hand thing if you don't have the symbol? We'll get to that at the end of the round. I'm going to keep re-rolling. We're going to assign the boot over there so I don't take any damage. We have this next zone which requires a star. Now I don't need to do a star, and in fact I might choose to skip the star, or I'll go for it. You know what? I'm gonna just keep rolling for right now. We'll see how it goes. Okay, but keep in mind I'm doing all of this in 10 seconds, so we're good over there. I'm gonna skip the star over there. You know, no, I'm gonna go for it. Okay, we're gonna keep rolling. We got a few seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1, and boom, perfect. Once the dice have settled, even if you're out of time, you can use the dice that have landed. I've locked that in. Sadly, not enough to do much over here. This can't really go there. We're done over here. And that is basically a round of Cuphead. But now let's go ahead and go through the cards and see how it plays out. In this spot over here, I have the 2 required symbols. I'm safe, no damage. In this spot over here, not only do I have the shoe over there, the jump or whatever it is, but I also have the pea shooter symbol. Now this is where if I had a normal gun, a regular gun on a regular die, Whenever you have an extra die and it's a pea shooter, that's how you do damage to the boss. Effectively, you're constantly jumping, dodging, trying to avoid the attacks, but you also have to shoot back at some point, and that's the point where you shoot back. When you have room for an extra die, you place a pea shooter, you're good to go, you deal 1 damage. Now, if you do it with the black die, you do potentially have other abilities you can utilize, including the starting ability, which you're going to start with for all the characters, where if you use your black die for the pea shooter, you do 2 damage. 1, 2, I'll go ahead and rotate the boss's dial down to 6, we're good to go over there, and then we move to the next zone. I have this symbol over here, so I'm going to go ahead and draw a wallop card. That's going to be a fun little card. They'll give us some sort of ability or interaction. Ooh, I got the symbol I can use. That's great. We'll save that for when I need it. And then we go to the last card where I'll take a damage because I did not interact or engage with that last card, and so, well, unfortunate for me. But that is basically a round of Cuphead. Now you're going to keep doing that until the boss is down to 0 health. Once the boss is down to 0 health, let's go ahead and pretend we do that. We go through a few rounds, we roll our dice, we lose another health, we grab some parry tokens, you know, maybe we interact with some cards over here. Let's go ahead and show you some. Some cards on the bottom will tell you to get a parry token if you successfully engage with it. So for instance, if this card over, they're here somewhere, I'm telling you, here we go. Here we go, a parry token. If we do that, we get a parry token, we slide that forward. There were 2 of them, so I was able to take 2. I wasn't totally cheating. And each character interacts with the deck themselves. Each character has to go through the same journey of the same cards themselves. From there, we're done. We move the boss's health down to 0, assuming we actually did, you know, enough damage to it. We knock him out, and then we move on to the next boss. We're going to grab that deck of cards we put off to the side. We're going to take these, put them off to the side. They're all done. We're gone. We're done with phase 1 of the first scenario. Each of these is their own little, each of these stacks is their own sequence of 3 bosses. Actually, I haven't gone through them all yet, so I don't know if they're all 3 bosses, but we're going to go ahead and we're going to open up the next one, put this off to the side, grab the phase 2 cards, set the phase 2 boss, rinse and repeat. Start again. You don't regain health, so you're going into this with whatever health you've lost. And there's one rule worth mentioning, which is if you ever have to cycle the boss's deck, if you haven't dealt enough damage, if you've just been playing a survival game, you're eventually going to start taking these timer tokens that will result in you basically hurting your score. That's what it does. It doesn't stop you from winning, but it hurts your score at the end of the scenario. Once we're done with boss 2, we're going to move to boss 3 over there. Let's go ahead and move to boss 3. And when you're done with boss 3, you'll go ahead and have a bunch of rewards. You'll get coins. You'll be able to buy a bunch of extras. I don't want to, you know, spoil things too much for you. There's fun stuff you can get that will give you abilities, things to interact with, more stuff to happen in this game. When you're done with that, you can go ahead and record your progress on this handy dandy little campaign sheet over here, whatever you want, and then move on to the next boss. Then you can jump in whenever you want. You can replay the same bosses. You get less rewards when you do so, but you could if you want. Along the way, you also have these super envelopes, which are a bunch of ways that you can earn envelopes. So you can earn what's in those envelopes. So for instance, if you end the game with 3 parry tokens, if you end the game with full health, there's a bunch of different triggers on these envelopes that if all players hit a certain trigger that round, you can go ahead and open one of these up and get a special ability. And that is 97% of what's going on in Cuphead. A few rules I probably didn't touch upon. You can read the rulebook for that. It's short, 7 pages, which brings us directly to the game, to the review part of things. Starting with ease of play, because I just talked about that rulebook, and that rulebook, it's a really easy game to learn. It's the sequencing I actually don't find to be immediately intuitive, and I will say one negative against it is, and maybe this is me, maybe I missed something, but it seemed to me that a bunch of terminologies were, it almost feels like they used different terminologies during development of the game and then didn't stick to a consistent terminology at the end. There are a few times where you have tokens referred to in different ways or things referred to in different ways that feels like they're referring to the same thing but differently. Didn't stop me from understanding the game, but definitely gave me little pauses of, am I missing something? And no, it looks like I have everything, so we're good to go. But that's a small little nitpick. Past that, the game is fairly easy to understand. I recommend just starting to set up and go and read the things as you go. It's real time, so make sure you understand the dice part of the game. But honestly, if you need to go through the first round without a timer just to give yourself that sample flow, the same way we did over here, so you can understand how things go ahead and give yourself that space and then reset and dive into it with the timer. Again, starting with 20 seconds, moving your way down to 15. For myself, I found 15 to be the sweet spot. I'm sure there are people who can just rapidly roll the dice. I mean, with 10 seconds, you have like 4 rolls just from maybe 6 rolls just from a practical stance. 10 seconds is very hard. But past that, fairly easy to teach, fairly easy to dive into. The game takes 20-30 minutes. Table space is fairly minimal. Each character adds one of these boards, and that's roughly if things are starting to fall down behind this box here. As far as player count, it's a 1 to 4 player game. I've played this at 1 and 2 players. I can see 3 and 4 working just as well. The additional players, they're all interacting with the boss in their own themselves, so the only real difference there is not much. You have more health on the boss because you have more characters taking it down, and the fact that you have more characters means inevitably someone's getting hit in different ways. Not every player will make it through alive, in 20 seconds maybe, but as you up the difficulty of the game, and you get more points at the end, by the way, if you have lower timers, so that's one factor there. But yeah, and as far as player interaction mostly comes, it's mostly minimal because you're doing things yourself, but it comes through the use of giving up different abilities, tokens, and stuff in order to help or revive other players. A small amount of interaction. Sometimes these wallop cards will give you different ways you can help each other. Again, it usually comes down to in some way, oh, here I can help you. Not a lot of player interaction past that. As far as what I like, don't like, and can see others not liking, let's start off with what I like over here, which is the game is true to the original Cuphead. It's fast, it's frenetic, it has that Cuphead feel despite being an abstraction of the game. It has that rapidly rolling dice, roll, get your 6 and 7 rolls in before you can, well, move to the part where you start taking damage or dealing damage to the boss. So it has that frenetic pace that Cuphead brings to the table. And the abilities and upgrades will, for me, be the highlight of the game. The first boss, and we'll get more into this in doing final thoughts and whatnot, but the first boss pack, to be fair, is not as fun as subsequent boss packs, because you're walking with no real abilities. It's good for learning the game, but the decision space in the game does not come down to rolling dice. Rolling dice has a few decisions. Do I take a point of damage just so I can move on to the next thing? There are some decisions to be made, but mostly, I would say 97%, I'm stuck with that 97 number, 97% of your dice rolling comes down to fast, frenetic rolling. There are a few decisions to be made around when to give in, when to assign a gun to a zone, knowing full well that that's one less die that will help you avoid an attack. There are a few decisions, but mostly it's just frenetic dice rolling, and a lot of the decision space will come around the abilities that start opening up the decision tree. Abilities you'll get from your first pack, abilities you'll get from these envelopes, abilities that you'll get after you encounter each boss, and those will open up the game more and more, and those are easily my favorite part of the experience. Past that, the game is a very short and accessible campaign, and you don't necessarily have to go into a campaign with a sheet or whatnot, but you could track your money, your health, all these things as you go boss to boss, encounter to encounter. Very easy and accessible. You can probably, if you tried, go through this entire thing in a single day. If you gave it a few hours, I don't know, I'm trying to guesstimate how much gameplay. If you were playing this like solo, or even just with a dedicated game group, you give yourself 5-6 hours, you can probably go through this entire thing fairly easily. I think I'm padding that. There's a decent amount of game, but more ideally spread out over multiple sessions. You could go back and hit the same bosses again, you get less rewards, but that's good. It doesn't allow you to purely grind through it and just get tons of stuff. So you could level up, get more gear, and there's this merchant phase where you buy different things, different cards, with the coins you've earned at the end of each boss phase. As far as what I don't like, the biggest thing for me is the 10 to 20 second rounds. This game, it comes in at roughly 25 to 30 minutes, and in any individual session, you're probably rolling dice for around 3 to 4 of those minutes at most. Most of the game comes down to setup, comes down to putting out new cards, comes down to the decision of what abilities you're going to utilize or things like that. But most of the game is do a bunch of setup stuff, play for 25-30 minutes, and 4 minutes of that is rolling dice frantically, and the rest of it is just the setting up the game itself, moving from round to round, moving from boss to boss, or from phase to phase. Doing all the maintenance of the game is most of the game time. I don't have an easy way out of that if they're going for that fast, frenetic Cuphead feel, unless you just make the card row significantly longer and give people 60 seconds and a whole lot more dice. I don't see an easy way around it, but the 10 to 20 second bursts of game time, it just feels way too restrictive as far as the fun parts of the game, as far as the main thing that you're doing in this game. This is a fast rolling dice game, and 70% of your game time, 80% of your game time is not rolling dice. So again, I don't have an easy way around that. It's the nature of the beast. But that's my biggest thing that I didn't like. Past that, there will be the strategy element that I touched upon already, where there's not a ton of strategy in the game. There are decisions to be made, do not get me wrong, there are definitely decisions to be made, but most of the appeal of this game is the powers and abilities and just rolling dice frantically, which is fine. We've seen other games do that time and time again, that have lower decision space and a lot more decision space around just the frenetic, hectic feeling that a real-time game can give you, and so it has that, but lower on the strategy side. As far as what I can see others not liking, to begin with, the real-time element. If real-time games aren't your thing, I do not see Cuphead changing your mind. If anything, I would say that Cuphead is possibly the most frenetic, the tensest real-time game I've played, because you have potentially 10 seconds per cycle of game. Most real-time games will give you closer to 2 to 4 minutes of rolling dice or flipping cards or doing whatever you're doing. Cuphead easily has given me the shortest burst of ability to actually do stuff, so if real-time isn't your thing, stay far away from this one, because it's not going to make you feel better or more comfortable. And then past that, I would say that it's worth knowing, walking in, that the game does not, in my opinion, truly start unlocking its potential until you've gone through the entire first package over here and started earning upgrades and abilities. Until then, the decision space that is already fairly small, even as you expand it, the decision space is small, that decision space is very constricted that first round. It's great as an intro to the game, it is great, but I specifically want to warn you in the sense that if you are not sure if this game is for you, I highly recommend going through at least 2 packs before making that decision. The first pack is not fully indicative of the experience you're going to have with Cuphead. As far as final thoughts on Cuphead, Cuphead manages to pull the feel of the Cuphead universe into this game despite having nothing to do with it. It has that feeling of frantically trying to avoid attacks while occasionally getting in your ping back in there, and you're trying to kind of stay alive and avoid those hits long enough while getting their pings back at them. The problem is if you sit there and try to stay in survival mode too long, you'll start getting these time tokens that will hurt your score. It manages to do a lot of game in those 10 to 20 seconds. The problem for me is going to be those 10 to 20 seconds. Despite the fact that it manages to have the Cuphead feel, the game time in this is just not a lot of game time. There's a lot of maintenance, a lot of pulling cards. And you're doing all that for 15-second spurts of activity. It's just, the balance there throws me off, and I'm not particularly attached to the IP either, so like, I'm not pulled in by the IP, I'm pulled in by the game with the theory and the ability, the general ability, or general concept of the game, but I'm not pulled in by the IP, and the 10 to 20 second rounds of gameplay are just not enough for this experience. I can really see people enjoying this one, especially if you're a fan of the IP, and especially if you don't mind real-time games, and if you're just in it for the fast, frenetic experience, especially with friends. This game plays well solo, but I think that it shines more with more players, because since this is less of a heavy strategy game and more of a fast frenetic, more players will lean heavily into that. For myself, this one's a 3 out of 5. It's a good game. I enjoyed it. It's a game I'm happy I tried. It's a game I'm happy I experienced. But I think that it's not one that needs to stay around for me. For yourself, I recommend trying this one. This is a good one to try. It has a decent amount of gameplay, but you have to enjoy real-time games, and you have to be okay with frenetic 15-second rounds, and then rolling dice for 4 minutes across 30 minutes of game time. If you're looking for other games that have the Cuphead aesthetic or art or universe, Vagrant Song and Townsfolk Tussle will have nothing to do with this in terms of gameplay, but bring you that art style. And if you want something that gives you a little bit more room within a real-time game to run around and do more stuff and not feel constricted by those shorter rounds, then Magic Maze or Magic Maze on Mars as a sequel, both of those give you a lot of game time and a lot of decision space while still maintaining that tense real-time element that you have to kind of survive past. In any case, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it helpful. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and have a good one.